I just have a special love for these old movie palaces.
The Fox Theater was where we wanted to go.
It was where you could live in a different world for a few hours.
I don't have a stronger memory of a building ever.
This was a fantastic, most beautiful building.
One of the biggest places I knew at the time. It's just wow.
Well, it's the awesomest building in the Inland Valley, I think.
It was really a glamorous, beautiful place.
Night and stars are shining on the screen. You know exactly what they mean. Your heart imagines every scene. Way back when, take me there, Pomona, come again.
The 1920s and 30s were the golden age of the movie palaces. Fox West Coast theaters began building entertainment palaces, and some of these theaters were the most opulent ever built, reminiscent of theaters in New York, San Francisco, St. Louis, Atlanta, and Detroit. These super Foxes were built on a huge scale, housing over 4,000 people. Other smaller Fox Theater entertainment palaces were built to support the growing motion picture industry. Pomona, California appeared to be the perfect location for such a theater.
This was more of a little bit smaller theater, although grand for its time and location.
It was maturing from a small agricultural community on the outskirts of Los Angeles County to a major hub between Hollywood and Palm Springs. Designed by Balch and Stanberry of Los Angeles, the Fox Theater in Pomona settled on the corner of Gary Avenue and 3rd Street, which many would consider to be the very heart of Pomona.
It's like one of the old theaters on Broadway in LA, you know, but it's right here in Pomona. 1,700 seats originally. I mean, that's a theater.
All the brass, and there were, when you went upstairs to the restrooms, there was a little velvet seats. The railing, how it curved down.
We had big imaginations, so it was like we were the big movie stars going up the stairs. I just loved it. It was beautiful.
The circular stairway was very impressive to me. I'd never seen a two-story building before since I came from Colorado.
The Pomona Fox had a big city flair with its Art Deco design, 1,750 seats, and $350,000 price tag. The 81-foot-tall corner tower, crowned with a rotating red and blue neon Fox sign, was the tallest structure in the valley and visible from neighboring cities. The sumptuous lobby featured a grand staircase with plush carpeting. In the vast auditorium, there were painted murals, comfortable seating, beautifully designed chandeliers and tapestries, gold and silver leaf glazed columns, and incredible plasterwork done by masters of the time.
It had painted murals on the walls, and it had a very ornate Art Deco treatment in the plaster.
Each room of the Fox featured new wonders and delights. Even the men's and women's lounges were an upscale experience that gave you the sense of being someplace special. Throughout the building, the latest technology, from the state-of-the-art projector room to one of the first commercial air conditioning systems in the country, a crowning achievement since it would be 3 more years before even the White House would have central air.
The tower on the building was not, in fact, just for the sign. It was an integral part of the air conditioning system.
This place was air conditioning, and other establishments weren't.
It was the only air-conditioned place in town, and a lot of people came here and cooled off in the summer, and we all dated here. You know, it was a place to go.
After years of planning and construction, the Pomona Fox Theater had its grand opening on April 24, 1931. When the doors opened, the city pulled out all the stops. Streets were jammed with residents hoping to get a glimpse of not just the incredible movie palace, but the movie stars and producers who came out for the premiere. The movie, The Minuteman, was renamed at the last minute to Six-Cylinder Love.
We know it now as Six Cylinder Love. At some point they changed the title, but it's listed originally as the Minuteman. And it starred Spencer Tracy and Sidney Fox and Edward Everett Horton.
Opening night guests received an elaborate program, part of the unsurpassed experience, a sense that every guest was a guest of honor.
It was the central location of all things exciting in Pomona. It really was.
It was a whole evening's entertainment. There might be a dog act or a singer or something like that who would perform on the stage before the movie started. You would have a newsreel, a cartoon, a short subject, maybe Laurel and Hardy.
And they always had the news around the what?
Newsreel.
The newsreels. And so we'd catch up on the war, and also the great big organ that Mr. Adams played.
Even though this theater never showed silent movies, you've got to remember that 1929 was the year sound came in, so no one was sure that this sound thing was going to last. So theater architects automatically put in an organ loft.
Great big Wurlitzer organ. And you saw the keyboard, his back was to you, and then on both sides were all the pipes.
And they're open so that the sound could emanate out from the walls.
In 1937, my very first recollection, my daddy brought me here to see Carmen Miranda and Don Amici in Down Argentina Way.
People were seeing things that they'd never seen because there were people who lived in Pomona who, never got more than 20 miles away from this town in their life, and it was the world coming to them.
Thanks to its vaudeville stage, the Fox also hosted a wide range of live performances such as concerts, talent shows, banquets, holiday dances, and political events.
When we're talking about those great vaudeville acts that we don't appreciate today, but that audiences in the 30s and 40s seem to love, one that comes to mind, we have a brochure from the Fox Theater's early days for Harry Lauder and his famous Prince of Wales crooked walking stick.
Bob Hope hosted two especially memorable radio shows featuring Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz, Shirley Temple, and Lawrence Welk.
By a radio transcription. The Command Performance shows saw him as a repeated guest star and master of ceremonies.
During the Great Depression, the Fox held fundraisers for charities and families in need and served as a shelter for flood victims in 1938. And after Pomona High School burned to the ground, the Fox hosted school assemblies and graduations.
Well, I can remember as a child, particularly, seeing Gone with the Wind here, right, I think, shortly after it was open, and also all of the previews. It would be in the paper, everybody in town would come.
And they had previews all the time here.
When the premieres were here,
the red carpet was rolled out and limousines rolled up.
The limos came, they would just line up
with the spotlights going out in front.
The big spotlight out.
Shining all the sky up. It was really, really neat.
The theory in Hollywood was that Pomona at that point was a slice of middle America. It was agrarian, but it also had an urban feel to it, so that
some people could go back to Hollywood, some people could continue on to Palm Springs. It was the perfect location for doing the previews at that time.
If it played in Pomona, it would play in the rest of the country.
The theater was equipped with special projection and sound equipment that allowed the screening of unedited works in progress. Pomona residents loved providing this small contribution to Hollywood's magic. They treated previews as if they were world premieres, wearing their most glamorous outfits and competing to spot the stars who came to watch audience reactions.
As the film people wanted to get better ratings for their movies, they discovered that if they made a local reference that it would make the crowds feel good.
In Sunset Boulevard, William Holden's character passes judgment on the fading career of Norma Desmond.
She dances the dance of the 7 veils. He rejects her, so she demands his head on a golden tray, kissing his cold, dead lips.
I love it in Pomona.
And this went on in much later than even the premieres, because it almost became an in-joke. We're going to mention Pomona.
The long-awaited unification of the armed services comes a step nearer as top-ranking officials agree on a plan.
The Fox became part of the war effort. Movies were screened during the day, even at midnight, for men and women in uniform.
On Saturday afternoons, they would come in, and that was their movie time when they would fill in the entire balcony and watch the movies during that day.
Gallons of wine, which rapidly go to...
In the days prior to television, the Fox Theater was also a home base for newsreels that told the story of the ongoing war and acted as a major venue for war bond sales efforts.
The folks would give him what? How much? 10 cents, 15 cents, and put him off at the show to watch the Westerns.
Saturday afternoon Western movies.
Hop Along Cassidy.
I worked here in 1949. Never did I dream as a child that I would ever be working. I worked in the box office, cashier. As a cashier, my greatest memory was one night, and I can't remember, since I'm 75 now, I don't remember exactly what the movie was. But we had them lined up from the box office all the way down to the corner and around the corner. And that night when I took my cash box up to the office, I was kind of nervous that I would come out good. I was 25 cents short. The next night, as I moved my chair to sit down again, I found a quarter on the floor.
Movie houses lost audiences in the 1950s, but the Pomona Fox hoped a major modernization would help. A new splashy neon marquee was added, and the interior and exterior were streamlined. Carpet was replaced, murals were painted over, decorative light fixtures and chandeliers were taken down, and decorative plaster was covered up. Soon, the entire downtown neighborhood went through major changes. 2nd Street was transformed into the first outdoor pedestrian mall west of the Mississippi, with the help of the famed artist Millard Sheets.
On the grand opening of the mall, on the day it was dedicated, they had 90,000 people here. That's what the paper said, at a time when Pomona had a population of 75,000. So it was huge. It was huge. All of that were attempts to bring people back into the downtown to help support the theater, to help support the economy down here.
My earliest memory probably would be as a young child in the late 60s coming down here to get my hair cut, which was where El Merendero restaurant is now on the side of the Fox Theater. Those were barber shops when I was a kid.
Through the 60s, this was, for me, it was definitely it. Definitely the place. We would hound Mom and Dad. Let's go to the movies. But we'd hound them long enough until they just had enough, and we got dumped off. You know, by the time I was 10, we were here at the movies.
I've seen this building go through a lot of stages. I've seen downtown Pomona go through a lot of stages, and this has been a focal point because of its beauty.
Despite these changes, moviegoers soon became unimpressed, and multiplex movie theaters with ample parking soon made the single-screen movie palace an economic dinosaur. The loss of Fox's patrons mirrored the loss of downtown Pomona's. Shoppers found their way to nearby freeway-adjacent suburban-style malls.
That's the beginning of the downfall of downtown Pomona, was the advent of the freeway, because it took all that traffic.
There was just no traffic down there. They had a lot of auto dealerships, but because it was not freeway close, they weren't the Cal Worthingtons. They were suffering from a lack of people coming down there.
You can drive up and down Mission Boulevard and you can see all of the old motor courts, all of the old little motels. That was because it was a huge thoroughfare.
Eventually, all 4 of downtown Pomona's single-screen movie theaters would close, and the failure of the pedestrian mall was made certain with the opening of Montclair Plaza in 1968.
They had the United Artists. Another one was up on North Gary, where Pomona First Federal is. The one I really liked was this one.
The last theater chain to own the Fox was Mann Theaters, which closed the doors to the Fox in 1976.
They came to realize that the economic situation in Pomona was such that Mann no longer wanted it, because they were just not going to put any more money into it because it was a losing venture.
I also tried to buy this place. At one time, that was before the city got involved, I was negotiating to buy it for $200,000. A member of the city says, no, we want to buy it. Back off.
Efforts to save the Fox began immediately, and the city of Pomona leased the building in 1977 and allowed Valley Community Theater to present plays.
The city was always interested in this particular facility and even had help from the federal government, but the mayor was for it and right, but the other three council people were talked out of it by Clay Bryant.
After an acrimonious 3-2 vote, the city council chose not to purchase the building for its original construction price, $350,000.
He needed one more vote. And he said he always kept reflecting on that, what he could have done or what he should have done to have gotten that vote. But that vote just had he said that had such a disastrous consequences for Pomona for so many years.
And so things got worse and worse all the time.
And that's when it then went into private hands.
Businessman Barry Riker then bought the theater and showed Spanish language films. Revival movies from Mexico were a specialty, starring actors Cantinflas, Vicente Fernandez, El Santo, and Sasha Montenegro. In 1980, the theater's storefronts were leased to El Merendero Restaurant and Bakery, which became a popular Mexican eatery for downtown.
I would go to El Merendero next door, and the restaurant had moved in by then to the Fox Theater. They'd stopped showing English language movies here. They were doing some Spanish language films. And then it became a lucha libre wrestling venue, I seem to recall.
Like the best lucha event that happened here was, what was his name? Ray Mendoza. Yeah, Ray Mendoza was a big name. And there was a pretty sizable crowd that showed up just to see him. And the energy level was just so amazing, like a near riot almost broke out. It was just, it's crazy. People were standing in their seats and like we were yelling at the wrestlers and the wrestlers were like threatening to, hit us with chairs and yeah, it was awesome. Awesome event.
I know at one point they were leasing it as a church.
This was a church that I used to come in. I believe it was called Para de Sufrir. And so me and my mom used to come here and we'd just actually sit like right back here. They used to like bring people up here and like put their hands over them so they could pray, and we'd be down there just putting our hands as well.
By this time though, in the early 80s, it had definitely fallen into disrepair and its glory days were over. And everyone even then knew it was kind of sad.
A revitalization of the west end of downtown started, and in 1994, the blocks around the Fox Theater were designated as the Pomona Arts Colony, a cluster of artist lofts, galleries, restaurants, and nightclubs, which complemented the Antique Mall and Western University on the east end of downtown.
Downtown Pomona is very nice. There's lots of positive things, lots of nice restaurants, gift shops, the Cal Poly Center. I hope it becomes the social center and kind of brings the community together.
Drawn by this emerging success, in 1998, the vacant and neglected Fox Theater soon fell into the hands of its next lessee, Amos Wallace. A convicted felon and promoter of dance party raves, Wallace and ravers ruined the interior of the theater for over a 2-year span.
And he just started having these events, and it was a nightmare for the whole downtown. People would be wandering around downtown looking for restaurants or anything that was open for bathrooms to use, because he'd have 1,500 kids in here, 1,500 people in here, and no working bathrooms. The fact that he wasn't closed down is still just amazing. He's the one who came in and painted the murals. He's the one who came in and started ripping out seats. He's the one who ripped out the snack bar.
ripping out the snack bar. Yeah, that was about as low as the Fox got, I think.
Galvanized by such abuses and partly as a result of citizen activism, the city finally closed the theater and then purchased it in 2002 for $1.1 million.
The city, after they purchased it, asked for volunteers who were interested in getting together on a committee to come up with ideas of what should happen to the Fox now that they owned it.
Pomona at that point decided that the nonprofit route was probably the best way for them to go because they didn't have the funding to fund ongoing restoration or operation of the theater.
Just to raise the money to buy the theater was a huge project, let alone the money to restore it.
A citizens committee called Friends of the Pomona Fox came together to assist and encourage the city to restore the theater as a civic auditorium. They would need all their energy and creativity as they explored how to preserve and reuse the theater. Their efforts fell short, however, when they couldn't get the restoration funds they needed.
So the Tessiers came forward, and the Fox board met with them and got on board and supported their efforts.
It was about 3 years ago when one of our nonprofit board members, Ed Tessier, came to our group and said that the family had been discussing it and had decided that they wanted to get involved more heavily in the restoration and to possibly buy the theater and utilize it in some way. Because of their association with the Glass House, they had made contact with Golden Voice, the AEG concert promoters, and particularly with the Tolle brothers.
I think the reason that the city is going along is because we have a track record of working with the city and working with the community. And that's very important. The community has to be behind you. If not, you can't succeed.
I just cannot wait for it to open. Yeah. I want to be here the first night it opens. I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, I'd like to see it look like it did then. It was beautiful. And it could be a showpiece again.
The Pomona Fox Theater holds a special place in the community and in the memories of all those who reside in the Pomona Valley. It was the city's civic auditorium and the valley's most prominent cultural center. Many consider it the Pomona Valley's most iconic architectural landmark and its most memorable gathering point. The Fox was the site of many firsts: first dates, first kisses, first jobs, or the first time seeing a movie or a movie star. Even after its grand reopening in April 2009, efforts to preserve not only the bricks and mortar, but also the soul of this important landmark will continue.
The palace lights come into view. Pomona looks and smiles at you. Follow a sweeping star. Maybe you'll find me there. Velvet curtains start the show. Night and stars are shining on the screen. You know exactly what they mean. Your heart imagines everything.